Hey guys, Tacoma guy here. We're going to do another episode on HP tuners on how to tune. This one, we're going to do the overview on, basically I think we're going to get through the engine section today. I think the other day I showed you around the software a little bit and how things work, how it breaks down. And now let's kind of get into a little bit of kind of just overall what these things do and each thing. So basically when you're doing the engine tuning, you'll be in the engine tab here. And then on the top, here's your overall sections. Okay. Let's go section by section. Again, you click this top one, and then below here it's got your sub areas. Put your mouse on the, when you put your cursor on each tab, it's going to show what each one does. Basically, these are just your overall idle speed to coolant temperature, okay? I don't think there's a whole lot to adjust on this one. Might want to raise this a touch. I don't know, but usually it chucks idle pretty good. But you can go in here and tweak it a little bit. Here's your idle in gear. And you're going to see it's a little bit lower than in neutral. So this is in neutral. This is when you put it in gear what the RPM goes to. That's your idle RPM. So pretty easy. So that tab, there's not going to be a whole lot to do. There's airflow. You have your startup airflow. The truck starts and idles pretty good, so there's probably not a whole lot that we're going to be adjusting in here at all that I can really think of. You know, if you want to tweak some of these, you can, but then this might change your idle and it may not start. So there's really, in the idle section, I don't think on most of these trucks, because you're not really doing major modifications, there's really nothing really to add, to change on any of these. So idle should be okay. But again, if you want to tweak the idle just a little bit, like in here, when you're waiting and you're like, man, it takes a long time for it to warm up, you could probably knock these down a touch. Now we go into airflow, and then here in airflow, we're going to be doing lots of adjustments. The next video is going to be on calibrating your mass airflow sensor, and that's right here. So you click on airflow, here's your correction. These tables don't do a whole lot. So there's not really too much to adjust there. Intake air temperature adjustment. There's nothing really too much to adjust because your intake air temperature is never going to be over 140, and it's 1 at the rest of the time, so there's not a lot to adjust. But this mass airflow sensor will, when you change your intake, you're changing what your mass airflow reads. Even if you have the stock intake on it, if you're running the stock filter and everything, your mass airflow sensor is probably pretty close. But if you've changed the filter, you have that silencer filter in there. If you've torn that out and added like a K&N filter, this reading's probably off. There's a little screen behind your air filter which restricts flow, but if you rip that out, that throws your calibration off. So it flows more, but then your calibration's off. So it's like a you gain some and lose some. So you're going to go in your mass airflow sensor, and when you change your intake, this is what you're going to calibrate your intake to. So when you buy a new intake manifold or a new intake for the truck, will it produce more power? Yes, if you recalibrate it. And here's how you recalibrate it in this section right here. Again, I have a video on how to do that. This is just showing you where to do it. So in airflow, now we're going to go to electronic throttle. These are not going to adjust too much. I can tell you what these, I know that these torque maps here will control your cruise control and your traction control. Okay, I haven't had enough time to play with them. I've experimented with them, and honestly, I like when you adjust these, it loosens up the traction control, which is awesome, but then your cruise control goes wacky. So that is not cool, because I have to drive so far off-road that I need cruise control. So I can't live without cruise control. But you might be able to go in here and just tweak these, just like, see in this range right here, these soft, this is why your traction control kicks on so early. You could probably just slightly, a percent or two, increase these numbers to tweak your traction control. And then this is like your limits. 89%, this is like the maximum throttle in gear. 89 is 90% is basically full throttle. Okay, I think 84 is actually full throttle, so this is allowing it to go full throttle. You don't want those throttle blades to go full 90 degrees, I guess, because they can lock. Or if that throttle blade over goes past 90 degrees, it can lock open and not close. So most cars only have you open the throttle to right before full 90 degrees. And that's what all these little maps are. These desired throttle angle is your throttle position. I'm going to click on here to plot this. Let's put the 2D chart on here. And this is your throttle angle. So if you want your throttle to be more responsive, then you're going to go into here and tweak these maps right here. Okay, so you have 0, 0, and you have to hit 3% throttle, and it opens it up. Not even, these aren't 1-to-1. This 4-liter's got so much torque, you have to slowly open these throttles up. But you could bring this throttle on faster, so you could increase these by a few percent. But then you have to do every map, because that'd be first gear, second, third, fourth, fifth gear. These are all going to be the same, but you could tweak one. Maybe first gear's too aggressive, so you want first gear to ramp in a little softer, but then the other gears you want to come in faster, but mine are all the same. So that's where you adjust your responsiveness of your throttle pedal. Change motion device. Your intake has 2 length runners. You have a long runner for torque and then a short runner for higher RPM. And you can adjust where these switch over from long to short. So like this, 2200 RPM, your low to mid, means that right at cruising on the highway, this may be opening or closing. So then you could either raise that up so it's staying closed or bring it down so it's opening faster. Same thing here. And then this is which one works. So the factory setting is mid to high RPM is when that's opening. So this is when this comes into play, and this is at what RPM it comes into play, and here's your cushion. So it's going to be open here, and you'll start opening and closing 300 RPM before that. And you have to be at 60% throttle before these open. Okay? So you have a couple of things going into play. At what RPM, how much free play is in there in the RPM, at what throttle position before it opens, and then if you want to be at high torque or low torque, medium torque. This you'll probably leave factory. I've played with it. It doesn't help, but depends on what you're trying, what your goal is and what your tuning goal is. So you'll probably just tweak these numbers. Like if you want your throttle to come on faster, maybe you'll lower this to 50%. Okay? Or maybe you want enrichment first, and then this not to open until higher RPM. So this again, all personal preference. The next thing in airflow is going to be your camshafts. Okay, and the base thing here is you're going to adjust your cam angle. Again, this isn't my final cam map. This is how my map came. I don't know if this is factory or not, if it downloads the factory map or if it downloaded the modifications from OVT. But just in general, here's your low RPM. So this one is your stock, and then everything above here from 30 up and over is the stuff you're going to be adjusting. Okay? Right in here, these cams could be open too far at these low RPMs, and it could be about right in here. And again, this is just trial and error. Basically, you can go anywhere from 0 to 45 degrees or anything in between. All your adjustments are going to be somewhere in between 0 and 45 degrees. Obviously, only 0 here, and then 10 degrees, and then it's going to gradually go up. And then as your RPM goes up, you're gradually going to open these cams up. Okay? And I think you're going to have maximum opening somewhere in peak torque. Okay? So at peak, somewhere in here is going to be your largest cam angle. Okay? 30, 35 degrees, maybe, who knows, and then the rest of this will be ramping up to that, if you know what I'm saying. That's the kind of my hint for doing the cam timing. And then your high RPM, the cam angle might slowly be going off. This is like dropping off pretty fast. So again, so something like this, except this would be your full throttle cam angles. But again, that's something you have to play with. I may be sharing a cam map in the future, but again, this is just where to adjust it. So there's your cam angle. So this section, you're going to have a lot of work. You're going to be adjusting your cams. This is your loads. Again, read these little things when you want the cams to go to full load, things like that. This is your intake, your 2-speed intake. This is your throttle. Basically, you're going to use these maps, or your how responsive your throttle pedal is. And in these maps, if you want to tweak your traction control, but then you could lose cruise control. This is your mass airflow calibration. Next thing is you have your fuel. And again, this section, there's probably not a whole lot really to do. With most of these stock trucks, there's not going to be too much adjustment in here because your truck's not that modified. So the biggest thing is going to be where you're going to set your stoic. Here, this default is 14.6. I've said before, you can go up to 14.7. Okay, these trucks don't like to run lean. They like fuel. The more fuel you give it, the more power it's going to make. Kind of, essentially, compared to most engines. I don't know why, but it likes a lot of fuel. So it's 14.6, 14.7 is really lean. They don't get that better gas mileage anyways, but you can run this anywhere from 14.6 to 14.1. 14.0 is probably somewhere in there. I like to use 14.4, but somewhere in there is like a good base setting for this. Again, depending on if you have ethanol or not ethanol. If you have non-ethanol, 14.4, 14.5 is probably good enough. If you have ethanol, you might want to go to down to 14.1. Oxygen sensor, again, there's not anything really to adjust in here. Next one's going to be your power enrichment. There's going to be some stuff to adjust in here. This delay is zeroed out, so you don't have to worry about it. Speed bypass, you could raise this mile an hour up to bypass it, but it's zeroed out anyways. What you're going to be adjusting is this throttle, okay, between this one and this one. So your airflow and your intake. So when you want your intake to go to full throttle, go to the short runners, and then when do you want your fuel to have power enrichment? I would think that you want these to be similar, but you might want the richer fuel first and then open the intake. So there's stuff you can play with. These don't have to be identical, but they're going to be similar. There's going to be some reasoning why. In this case, that 75 is really high. You really have to be on the gas hard to get it to open, so that is too much. That has to be changed. And then your power enrichment, when you do hit this number in here, whatever it is, anywhere from 40 to 60% probably is optimal. Then it'll transfer over to this map, and then this is where you set your fuel. Again, you're going to divide this by the 14, take the 14.6, divide by this, and this will give you whatever this comes to, 12 something, or I mean like 11.5, something like that. Again, a good starting number for fuel enrichment is probably around 11.5, somewhere in there, and then go from there. Then we have temperature control. This is the only thing you have to be aware of in tuning, and I may have forgot this in my other video. To adjust the fuel, you may have to disable this. Okay? What happens is when your catalytic converters reach a certain temperature, it'll switch over to this map. So your catalytic converter doesn't overheat. And this map can supersede your power enrichment. Okay, so between this and power enrichment combine to give you your fuel air ratio. So you're either going to adjust this, leave this, or just it's enabled right now. If you're not having a problem, you can disable it. But for some reason, when you're doing your data logs, if the fuel is not equaling what you adjusted, it's because this is enabled. And again, you have to disable this to turn that map off. And again, you can adjust these. This is kind of how you can adjust your thing. You could use this as a bypass for your fuel enrichment. But so far, my luck has been that the gas mileage is horrible with this turned on almost no matter what I do. Again, I'm still playing with it, and it was going into winter. But I think some people are using this for their fuel table. I've got two maps. My performance map I do, and my normal map I don't. That's your temperature control. So then, yeah, you have that map. The next thing is your cutoff. This is basically your rev limiter. You can raise that to 6,000, but if you don't have a supercharger or anything, 5,800 RPM is probably enough anyways. This motor doesn't really pull that hard on the top end, but this is your rev limiter for that. Next thing is your spark. Again, I'm going to have a video on basically how to adjust these, but this is your ignition table. This is your base timing for the truck right here. And between these two, I don't know why there's two tables, but it doesn't matter. Basically, when I'm tuning, I make these two the same. This high octane spark, I don't know why it's less than this map. It is slightly more. It's more and less at the same time. It's a little odd because I don't think it's adding timing. So it lets it go up to this, I think, at low RPM. But then this is lower here. So it's strange how this map is laid out. I don't really get it. You could leave that the same. I think what I'm doing right now is making these three maps all the same. I copy and paste those three. And in this map, I copy and paste the same map and then lower it 5, 6, 8 degrees, something like that. But you want to make this is your low octane map. So this one you want lower. And part of this is your whole timing schedule. Like basically, I'm going to tune mine so it doesn't have knock. So I'm not tuning off the knock sensor. Some people are. And then I think you use these maps to set up your timing table so then it can advance up to this map. It starts at this map, advances up to that map, but retards down to this map. I think is how that works. I don't do it that way. I just set my base timing the same, and I have a low octane map so it can go down to this map. And that's about it. There's really not too much more to adjust in all this stuff. That's going to be your basic thing is your timing right here. Here's your retard settings. Here's your default retard settings. So this is when you're getting knock, when it enables, when it turns off, things like that. Maximum learned amount. So if you want to leave your knock in there so it knows to retard the timing, but you can adjust it if you want to make adjustments to that in here. Basically, that's all I'm going to say about that. You should probably leave that on if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with this at all. How about if I say it that way? If you don't know what you're doing, don't mess with this at all. Just tweak these three maps right here and don't worry about it. And then that's your spark adjustments. The torque model, this is your optimum torque. This one, I believe both of these together control your transmission. Okay, I have not messed with this one yet. I have this correction. I have messed with it yet, but I haven't found I haven't really figured out what this map does yet. This map I know controls basically the lockup of your torque converter. Okay, so this is like your stock setting. If this is too tight down here, you can back these numbers down. If it's too loose, you can raise these numbers up. So the higher the number, so right here at 2400 RPM at full throttle, this is your maximum lockup right here. So this is when your torque converter is locking the hardest, is right here, and then it softens up down here. That's basically what it is. And by RPM, you don't want this torque converter locking up too soon, so you have to gradually bring it in with load and RPM. Again, if you're not really sure what you're doing, then just don't mess with this at all. But there's some performance to be gained. But it's hard because of the trucks you use for driving and towing. In driving and towing, you probably need different torque maps, so you kind of need an average map. So, or different maps for different uses. But it only lets you have one map in at a time. So that's your torque map for your transmission to control your lockup. And then that is basically overall your engine adjustments and the maps we're going to be using to adjust things and kind of what they do. All right. If you guys like this stuff, subscribe, like, and share. All right. Thanks. Bye.